Good evening. We're glad you are here. I am Ray DeLoe. I'm the president of the Salinas Taxpayers Association. I'm not sure how I accomplished that. I think I drew the short straw and they needed somebody to put their name down and phone number to contact, and so I am the one that have been doing that for about the last year, so we'll have an election here pretty quick and we'll hand that off to somebody else. We're going to be talking about a tax plan. At TAMC's calling it the Transportation Investment Plan. So, and Debbie, what is your official title, Debbie?
Executive Director.
Okay, Executive Director for TAMC is going to present this material to us. And folks, I'm going to apologize up front. I have one of the problems of still being a person that works is I've got a meeting with the elders of my church that I've got to be at in about 25 minutes. And they really take a dim view if I don't show up. Just really do. But Debbie, I know that I have read as much of the material that I can on this, and I believe this will be very informative. I have one question that unfortunately I'm not going to be here to ask, but what is the guarantee? This is a question I ask all of our city council and stuff also when they pass a tax measure. What is the guarantee that we're going to have that Salinas, which is the largest city in the county, is going to get their share of the money spent on their roads, on the roads that will have the most effect on their citizenship? And I will get the answer to that. Peter or someone will give me that. If you can answer that today to the best of your ability, I would really appreciate that.
That sounds great. I'll include that in my presentation.
Okay.
Okay.
And this mic, it's wireless, so you should be fine.
Okay.
And folks, if you want to just turn your chairs, you should be able to see that, and it's up there good, and even larger than what you get at City Hall, to tell you the truth. And Debbie, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I love this. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Ray. I appreciate the microphone. I got some frog in my throat that won't go away. I'm Debbie Hale with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, as Ray said, and I'm here with our Community Outreach Coordinator, Teresa Wright, who you all probably are familiar with. And we're here to talk about our discussion draft transportation investment plan called Keep Monterey County Moving. Okay. So, that's all right. Okay. So just a few visuals here to show you what is the transportation need. Our aging roads are crumbling. You're going to recognize these: Hartnell Road, Jensen Road, County Roads, city streets. My favorite in Salinas is Stone, because I take that in to go over to the county building where we drop off our van pool, and that is the funkiest road. Old Stage Road, you just pick the location, and there are so many roads that are falling apart in this county. We have over $1 billion of road improvement needs. We did a survey of all the cities in the county and came up with that number. That is backlog. And the problem is, the longer we wait, what this chart shows is if you do regular maintenance every 5 years, it's about $30,000 a year, a mile. I'm sorry, $30,000 a mile to maintain it. If you wait and you do, let's say, every 10 years, it's about $225,000 a mile to do a rehab, like an overlay. If you have to wait and fix streets like the ones in the pictures, then it takes about $1 million a mile to reconstruct the road. You have to dig it all out, you replace the subbase, you put the overlay on top. So it's kind of like keeping your house in good order. You want to do regular maintenance along the way, otherwise it costs 10 times as much. And so the problem is we've been waiting for a while. Some of you know we've been trying to get a local measure in place, and meanwhile, what some of the next charts will show is that the state money has been declining. So we also have regional road issues. Highway 68, our main corridor between Monterey and Salinas, huge traffic jams, certain safety locations as well. Highway 1 also jammed up, overcrowded buses for can't afford to drive. Safety issues, Castroville Boulevard and 156, our top remaining safety location in the county. 101 in South County, trucks driving across the road in front of traffic going 70 miles an hour. Pretty scary. And then we have an aging population, folks that have to get their parents or soon themselves around, can't drive, and then kids who need to get to school. If you've ever seen the traffic jams around schools, you know that it's hard to get the kids around, and one, their kids are riding bikes, there's too many cars by the school, or there's not safe for facilities. So lots of issues. What's the problem? The problem is that gas tax hasn't been raised for 20 years. So we're getting a great bargain on the gas tax, but we're paying for it in terms of the really bad road problems. So not only has inflation eroded the gas tax, but the fact that all your cars get better mileage. TAMC has an electric vehicle. We're not paying any gas tax. We have a hybrid. We're not paying our fair share for the miles that we put on the road. So the gas tax revenues have plummeted. Just like, so they only buy half as much as they bought 20 years ago. So what's our proposal? Our proposal is this time to help ourselves. We can decide how, if we raise local money, we can decide how to spend that money. We can use that money to get matching dollars for grants that always say, well, you have to come up with a local match in order to get our money. You don't have that local money. And the state cannot take the money. That's probably the number one thing about it. The state sometimes gives, the state sometimes takes away. We all know that the state has been talking about different solutions. The governor came out with a new one, and yet it hasn't happened. We just can't count on them to do something. So we are proposing my favorite percentage, 3/8%, which is a fraction of a penny. 3 slices of an 8-slice pie. It's a very small amount that you pay on your purchases, and yet if we all pay it together, it results in $600 million over 30 years. Now, that's not the $1 billion that we need, but it takes a huge bite out of the problem and helps us catch it up. So we asked folks, well, okay, we can't do everything. What's your priority? So this word cloud, I don't know if you've seen those before, but the biggest words are the ones that were mentioned most often. So you see fill potholes, bike safety, pedestrian safety, Highway 68, bus service, congestion relief, senior transportation, safe routes to school, local roads, innovative technology, complete streets, stormwater. Those are the things that popped out in our various discussions with people as to how they would spend this limited money. We took this and we crafted a plan, and it has to be a balanced plan. So it's half of the money would go simply to the cities and the counties to do these local road improvements, and half the money would go for regional projects, say on state highways and such. And I guess our president already left. He was going to stay for that part. So local roads would get $300 million, and they would go for road repairs first, right? County and city roads. Traffic and safety, bike and pedestrian safety, stormwater drainage, new technology. Every city, we've got 12 cities in Monterey County, plus the whole county. They all have different needs. Everybody has road repair needs, but some people want to focus more on sidewalks. Some people want to just get the streets fixed. So this would be flexible money that they could choose. And do we have the chart? Okay, I took the chart out. So each city would get a guaranteed percentage of the money based on what their population and lane miles are. So in Salinas, population and lane miles. Lane miles. So it's kind of a proxy for usage, right? If you were in need. So if you have more miles of roadway, like the county has tons of miles of roadway, but maybe not as many people living in the unincorporated area, but let's face it, we all drive county roads. So that helps to balance it out, whereas if you have a very small, dense city, then like let's say Monterey is a pretty small space, then they get a little bit of higher share for the population, but a little bit lower share for the lane miles.
So is both population and lane?
Right, 50-50 based on that. So in Salinas, that works out to about $76 million over the 30 years. So that works out to about $2.5 million a year. So that's huge for the city of Salinas. And it's guaranteed for them. And so we're proposing a way for that to happen by, that we would set aside a separate account for them. We would say we want to spend it on doing a citywide road rehab program. And we would say, okay, that's eligible. We stamp and approve, and then they send us a bill and we pay the bills. Another way that's been proposed is that we give the cities each the money and they keep it in their accounts and such. And I guess I'm kind of seeking a little bit of input. We would prefer, rather than to come back and audit 12 cities in the county every year, spend money on that, to make sure they were spending it the right way, that they would just come to us and we'd say, here you go. And we couldn't deny them a project if it was eligible. So they could get the money as soon as they wanted it, but it would just be in a bank account that we control.
So you mean the money you give to each city, is that to use just for that area of that city, or the city itself?
City itself, yeah.
So this is not county then?
So each of the cities would get money and the county would get money.
Okay.
Yeah, because everybody kind of controls their own little pieces.
So the 6 million, that's Salinas portion for the city.
That is the Salinas portion for the city. County would get about 130 million.
I'm sorry?
County would get about 130 million over that time. Yeah, and those are the two numbers that I've memorized because we're giving those presentations tomorrow. the other 10 I haven't memorized. So then there's the regional safety and mobility. So it's kind of like, here's a step that can be done within a city or within the county roads, but we don't all drive within one city. We don't all walk around within one city. We're all over the place. We're integrated. So we've got some regional projects. Probably the top regional project on the list is Highway 68. We heard that mentioned more often than any single road. That corridor has more safety issues, more collisions than any other corridor. And we'd like to do some improvements. We know we can't afford to do a full widening on that, but we're doing a corridor study right now to take a look at how can we improve safety and how can we move people through those darn stoplights faster. Second project priority is at Castroville Boulevard and 156. 156 is also a huge corridor, and the top collision location and point in the county is at 156 and Castroville Boulevard. It's a half stoplight. They would never let you go there right now. It helps contribute towards the traffic on 156, but it also is a big safety issue. So that's another project on the list. Improvements on US 101 from South Salinas. We just, our agency is a funder, right? So we work with Caltrans, we set priorities, and we help to try to push it through the delivery process and get things built. So we worked with Caltrans over the last 15 years, I've been with the agency, to get Railroad Boulevard interchange. Worked with the city to get some trade money for Sanborn Road, which is going to happen any time now. The Prudell Improvement Project, Russell Road and Espinoza, all the way up to Crazy Horse Canyon Road, and then the Sanborn Road interchange. So the northern part of 101 has a lot of new improvements. But south of Salinas, Harris Road, the merge on Abbott Street, they would never build that left-hand merge, not a good merge. That needs an interchange somewhere in there. Going down, you saw the photo of the truck turning left across traffic. We can't build an interchange everywhere that there are crossovers, but if you have good frontage road network, you can direct people to the interchanges, so that they don't have to make those left turns. They go to the next interchange, they make a U-turn essentially at the interchange, instead of making a left turn. So that's what this project would do, create a network of frontage roads and add that interchange somewhere, either at Abbott Street or Spence Road, that area, and remove a lot of those left turns. Essentially what was done in the Prudell corridor. That's just a few of the projects on the regional list. I believe the handouts got all the results for that after this. We also want to provide some mobility improvements for some special groups, safe routes to schools, commuters, commuter buses, Salinas Valley Transit. Just to give you an example, the MST Transit facility is based in Monterey at Ryan Ranch. They have a huge ridership going up and down from King City up to Salinas. Those buses have to sleep at night in Monterey. Well, that's a pretty expensive place to keep your buses in Monterey if you're starting in King City at 6:30 in the morning. So they would like to have somewhere in this Salinas Valley a transit maintenance facility to save operating costs, because that's always the biggest cost. Downtown safety and walkability. There are lots of places like Salinas that have done a local plan for downtown vibrancy. It helps people get around so that they don't have to drive. It helps with the economic vitality of your downtown. And it's a program that there is state money, but again, they always want to match. So we worked a lot with the city on the downtown vibrancy plan, and we'd like to help them to make it a reality with some of the bigger pieces of it. So we thought this would be a good program to put in. Seniors and people with disabilities, there's still some gaps in the senior transportation service program. You know, MST has the rides program, and it works well for certain trips, and it doesn't work well for other trips. And there are other nonprofits that do this kind of thing, but they're really scraping for money. We would like to help them out to improve the senior transportation. And then the last bullet, habitat preservation, it's actually decided it's more in the road category. If you plan ahead for the habitat you're going to take when you build the roads, and you can buy some of it ahead of time, and you can get a head start on the habitat preservation that you're required to do anyway, and it's much less expensive. So it's kind of a win-win. It's better for the critters, but it's better for the financiers as well. And so we'd like to do some of that, and it helps us build partnerships with the environmental organizations, which was wisely pointed out to me is important. So that's the program. So what are the safeguards? We would have to have annual audits in order to make sure we're spending the money where we said we would. We want to have a citizens oversight committee, and we'd love to have one of you all participate in that. What we've heard is that we don't just want to have an annual meeting and say, okay, yeah, you're not stealing money, but we want to have a voice in what gets delivered first, and what's happened with the projects. And so more like a quarterly meeting where you get project delivery updates. That is fine. That sounds like a good idea. You can't use the money for anything but transportation projects. That's the beauty of a voter-approved initiative. Somebody said, what if the county decided they need to pull this over and use it for Natividad? No, they can't do that. Now, to make sure, we'd like to hold on to the money and give it to them along the way, but we'll work that out. No fund shifting. If the county currently gives $2 million in TOT, hotel tax, to transportation, we don't want them to decide, oh, well, we're going to have $4 million a year out of this program, so we're not going to give the TOT to it anymore. It's called maintenance of effort, and that needs to be clear so that anybody that's regularly been giving the money doesn't do a bait and switch. Function. The program sunsets. It is a long period of time. It's 30 years, but that's because these projects take that long. But when the projects are delivered, it's done. It's not going to go on forever. And the state cannot take the money. So did I answer the Salinas question yet on that one? Let's just go back to the safeguards. You wanted to know how do I make sure the city of Salinas gets their money? How to make sure they don't spend it on something else? How do I make sure they cannot take it and spend it on something else? That's why I'd like to have it in our bank account, and they ask for it and we give it to them. And we're really fast. We live to give other people money. Oh, that's okay. It's my activation. So, excuse me. What's the time frame? Where are we at now? We're in the draft plan, talking to people, giving our input. We have been talking with the stakeholder group for a long time, but we put the draft plan out there. We wanted to get people's feedback. We are taking around to each of the city councils this month and next month to get their input, because we need to get a majority of the cities representing a majority of the population to adopt this plan before we can put it on the ballot. Oh, thank you. And so we want to get any comments that they have before we're asking them to take action. So we'll be at the Salinas City Council tomorrow night. We'll be at the County Board of Supervisors tomorrow afternoon. So feel free to come and
Are you before or after the campus?
at the county or the city?
At the city of Salinas.
Oh no, is the city one of the campus?
We might have a big crowd there listening to you.
Is it tomorrow? I haven't looked at it yet. Oh wait, that's here. Go back. So let's go back to it. I hope we're before campus. They might all be in a good mood though. That's okay. Oh, that's all right. So what the timeline shows though, is that we need to have all the cities adopt the plan and the county by June. We're trying to get them a little bit before then. And then the county places it on, we're good. The county places it on the ballot. And that needs to happen before the first week in August. And then it's on the ballot November 8, 2016. That's our goal. So we'll do, I didn't have a poll in here. That's right. Yeah, so.
You're probably keeping it a big secret, so.
No, we're not. No, there was an article. So, is it right after that? Oh, okay. That's okay. So we did a poll.
How many people?
We polled, it was in the neighborhood plus or minus 400, I believe, 400 or 600? 600, yeah. And the way that you do these polls is they do a random sample geographically based on where the voters come from. So it's not based on where the people come from, but where the voters come from, just because that's how you know. I mean, they always start by saying people are still thinking positively about the direction things are going. And the bottom line is that in the last time we tried to put this on the ballot, we got 63%. We did not get 2/3. We needed a 2/3 vote, 67%. We're all probably aware of that. But this time we polled and we get to 68% with information. And so that's pretty close, right? I mean, you wouldn't want to be that close. We don't want to be that close, but it's still a good number. Our polls have pretty much tracked with whatever we got on the ballot. So, in fact, I look back in May of 2008, and we polled 63%. So we're going to do another tracking poll probably in May to see whether attitudes have changed, the economy has changed, different things that's happening at the state level have changed people's minds. And we will have a presentation on the whole poll at our board meeting, and I think Kevin might go, which is this Wednesday at 9 o'clock. So that's where we're at. We're just taking it around to get everybody's input. What Teresa's handed out to you is our first cut at a flyer, and it goes into a little more detail on the back as the list of regional projects and such. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Okay, I have quite a few, so.
Sure.
I like small crowds.
Small crowds.
We'll go back and forth between you and the.
Okay, sure. Okay. So right now, is there any other way TAMC gets revenue for what you're asking for now, other than the gas tax?
Let's see, that's a good question. Okay, so let's just take projects in the 101 corridor. How do we, because we work on the regional projects, and cities and counties pretty much get gas tax, and the county has gotten some TOT. And I don't know how much general fund the city of Salinas puts in, but I don't think very much. They get impact fees. So you look at the 101 Crudell project, and A, we've been saving for that forever with the state gas tax money. B, in 2008, I believe it was, we approved the Prop 1B bonds. And so we put some money into that project and a lot of that money, the bond money, into the Salmon Road interchange. There's a federal stimulus. We put $10 million of stimulus into the Salmon Road interchange. And there's a little bit of regional impact fees, I think, from the county, a couple million in the Pernille improvements. So impact fees, we do have a county-wide impact fee program. There's not that much development. I think maybe we got about $5 million we put into the Salmon Road interchange. Yeah, maybe a little more. So what still exists? Impact fees still exist. Gas tax is falling because the gas tax is partly based on the price of gasoline. And as I said, people are getting better gas mileage. There's no stimulus. There's no more bond money. So that's the problem that we're facing.
Okay. So I was in the paper just a week, and that Congress instructing, and that's where.
Legislature, yeah.
That he wouldn't want to raise it, revenue for transportation. I imagine the price almost has to be gas tax.
He's got gas tax, he's got vehicle registration fee, which currently the vehicle registry does not go to transportation, which is interesting. Yeah. And we spent all last year waiting for them to do something because it helps frame how we set up this plan. Because, you know, $1 billion worth of maintenance needs, probably $1 billion worth of regional safety needs. We could certainly use all of that money, but a lot of the governor's money would go to local roads. So that would be good. So maybe we wouldn't put as much to local roads, maybe we could do less, but I am not holding my breath on the governor. He has got to get, I believe, a 2/3 vote in order to get it to pass for urgency, and we have fewer people that are willing to vote for it. I'd love to
There's
see
too
it.
much stuff being jammed on the ballot, so, yeah.
And, well, and I don't know, the governor doesn't have to go on the ballot, interestingly enough.
Right, for gas tax, that's just Congress, I think, would vote.
The state legislature.
Well, let's say, start,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, right.
Okay, in the back.
One question that several people have asked me to ask tonight.
Oh, okay.
Who decided for the signal light at Highway 68 in Hitchcock?
I hate that signal. Caltrans decided on that. Caltrans has spent so much time telling us, no, you can't put signals out there. I cannot imagine how that means warrants. They told us about this and we said, oh, that was nice for you to ask us about it. I just can't imagine. I know that there is a collision history in that location because we've been looking at the safety stats, but I just cannot imagine why that was a high priority. And it's kind of like, by the time we found out about it, there wasn't anything we could do. I mean, those kind of small safety projects they just do. So yeah, Caltrans.
Well, we'll see how many accidents happen because of that signal light.
And that's the thing that blows me away. So they've been telling us on 156 we cannot put a stoplight on 156 because the traffic's too fast moving. And I'm thinking that makes sense to me. So we would just, yeah.
Now, my next question
Oh,
is,
back to
what keeps the legislature, and are you lobbying for a raise in the gas tax? 20 years is way too long to not have it even just a pittance of an increase. Does TAMC lobby for an increase in the gas tax?
We do. We work with a whole coalition of other transportation agencies, and we would at least like to see it raised for inflation. You know, construction inflation, right? Because that's what we pay for, is the construction inflation cost. We've been doing the same thing at the federal level too. So there's a federal gas tax and a state gas tax. And for the first time in ages, there's actually proposals this last year and then this year. The feds haven't even made proposals. So.
Well, even though there would be a great many people who don't like paying more money for their gas, but when they can see the results of a slight increase,
Yeah.
even a slight increase, I think they would vote for it. In talking to people about gasoline costs, you know, nobody wants to pay $5 a gallon, but we pay it. We pay it, and then what do we get back for it? I mean, we're not really reaping the benefits of the cost of gasoline actually going up. And I think there needs to be some leadership in Monterey County that says, start lobbying Sacramento and Washington, D.C. They've got to start changing their philosophy on paying for this infrastructure that everybody is allowing to deteriorate. And, you know, pretty soon we're going to be back to the horse and buggy stage, you know, when it comes to that kind of transportation. So I would love to see that when TAMC is out there lobbying, that you let the public know what you're doing and, you know, send this letter to, or, you know, get on this bandwagon and do something about it, because we will pay it. We're paying it at the pump. but we're not getting the benefit of, especially when gasoline goes up to almost $5 a gallon. You know, you don't see that. And then my last kind of concern is we move a lot of traffic through points in Monterey County that go to benefit the tourist industry on the coast. And to the best of my knowledge, we get very little benefit out of that because a lot of those are day trips. So the people fill up their gas before they leave San Jose or Modesto or someplace, and they come and they visit, and, you know, the burden on our roads and streets and the congestion, a lot of it is just caused by, you know, I manage property over in Pacific Grove, and I know exactly what time to go to Pacific Grove and what time to get out of Pacific Grove. Or I can spend way too much of my time sitting in traffic, which doesn't accomplish anything as far as I'm concerned. So I don't mean to be selfish about this, but I think the peninsula cities need to give back some of the money that they might be receiving to help make these improvements on the roads that we're delivering their high-priced people to come and you know, enjoy a weekend on the peninsula. And I know that's, you know, that's a political hot potato.
Well, there's a couple ways to approach that, and then we'll go to you, Wayne, right? So one way to approach it is that they might not buy their gas here, but they're buying other things here. And I believe that the stats for sales are somewhere in the range of 20 to 30% of our sales tax revenues come from visitors, and it you know, varies depending on which part of the county we're in. So they're going to pay part of this sales tax if it passes, and so that helps us deal with the traffic. And that's probably about the impact that they have on the roadways. So it's actually not a bad way to do it. So, you had a question? And then I'll go to Ted.
What we passed last year, either H or G was supposed to be 4 streets, and it's supposed to start implementing that in July this year for the streets and things. Is that included in your taxes too?
So my understanding was that the city is focusing that money on public safety. They might have put in a little bit for streets, but I know that the need is great in Salinas. I have not seen their plan. You guys might have seen their plan more specifically, but I think they were putting the vast majority of that money into public safety needs and maybe just a little bit into
It'll be
the roads.
rolled out tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Measure G is being held in the rotunda at 3 o'clock before the city council meeting.
Oh, well then
So
we're going to be there for, so yeah.
concerns about where that money's going.
Okay, great, Mr. Ted.
Maybe we should do toll roads. Well, on the order of how they pay for the Golden Gate Bridge. As you drive down Highway 101 or 1, you pay a few cents or 10 cents. Maybe that would be a way of generating cash without having to do a real tax.
So one of the interesting things you discover in this field is that it takes a little bit of everything. And I'm going to bring you along to our next set of meetings on 156. Because you have to have the right kind of situation in order for a toll road to work. You just want to have everybody drive around and take other ways. And 156 is a good location. We're still studying it to make sure that people don't just drive elsewhere, but it's kind of like a bridge between 101 and Highway 1 for people coming from the Bay Area and the Central Valley. And so our initial studies have shown that we could charge maybe $2.50 a direction, maybe even a little bit more on the weekends for people driving on 156. And we probably have to come up with some kind of a frequent traveler discount for people that commute on that road. But we're continuing to look at that. You kind of have to put the money towards that corridor. You can't tax one location and then put it throughout the county. So it works in some locations, these bridge-like locations, but doesn't work in others. And that's why we don't have a ton of money in the 156 project. We just have this one safety interchange that will help out with 156 in order to do the big widening. that's what we're looking
But
for.
why not just on 101? With traffic that goes 101 every day, we could probably pay for this whole thing with just a few 10, 15 cents a car.
What do you guys think, Angela?
No, let's not start that.
It should be everywhere.
I still want to bring you with
10
me.
cents and 15, next year 20 and 25 and $1 and $2.
Okay, Pete, I made you wait. What's your other questions?
Okay, I spoke with someone from TAMC over a year ago, and he mentioned this, and I think it's, I want to ask you if this is involved in this, is that they want to build a train track from our train station up to San Francisco and Sacramento. Is that part of this tax year?
So it's not part of this because we believe that we're going to be fully funded to get the money from other sources. Now, there's couple of different projects, but the one that we're most actively working on is to have rail service come down, come from Salinas and then go up to San Jose. So we go Salinas, let's say, Pajaro, Castroville, Gilroy, San Jose, and then via Sacramento on the Capital Corridor. So right now, we've got the first phase of that project funded, essentially to come down to Salinas. We still have to work on the operating rights and such. We are in the process of negotiating for property now at the Salinas Station to extend Lincoln Avenue and make the improvements necessary at the station for that to happen. So that's where that's from.
I can't imagine that being cost effective. I mean, have you studied, or has your agency studied how many people would use that on a routine basis?
We have done the fare box recovery studies on it, and it is, I'm trying to remember the statistics on it just because I out there. It meets the fare box recovery requirement, which means that you can raise enough money to cover to cover about half of the cost of running it, and the rest comes out of the state intercity rail program. So it's an alternative to widening Highway 101, which we can't afford to do.
I mean, did they give any number, and people would use it for Salinas?
You know, the numbers have changed like 3 or 4 times. I used to have it off the top of my head that it was going to be, 600 people a day that were going to use it. It's gone down since then, and we're constantly doing ridership analyses, and it depends on how many trains.
So since, I'm not attacking you, but
No,
600 people a day, and we're building a train track and trains and all the stuff, and then you say, we'll incur half of it, and another half comes from
The state intercity rail
Of
fund.
course, where does that money come from? You have to be tax increase somewhere else, right?
It's already in the state funded program.
Yeah, but they
So
can't have money just sit there and wait for a Salinas.
Dear,
it's not just sitting there waiting for us. They're getting money.
in the big picture, this
the
is part of the
county program.
connectivity plan for the California high-speed rail. There will be a station in Gilroy for the high-speed rail, and the dream is that this line will be able to connect with the high-speed rail. And if the high-speed rail project continues, no question about it, I'm sure that TAMC will be under great pressure to build this particular line using this money. Has anybody on board mentioned this particular project and whether there should be a provision in there regarding whether or not this money should be used for high-speed rail connectivity?
No, it's not been brought up because we've come up with funding for this Salinas connection. And a lot of people don't like the high-speed rail service, so it kind of cuts a lot of different ways. The reason why it's cost effective is that the tracks are already there. So yes, there's some spots where we'll have to do some double tracking and station improvements primarily, but that's the only way that it's cost
Okay, this
effective.
other job is that they don't own the tracks. Okay,
So-
if you're using existing tracks, that's.
Yeah, that's the only thing that makes it cost effective. Now, the rub is that we have to negotiate with Union Pacific on that, and actually the state of California is going to have to negotiate with Union Pacific on that.
The idea would probably be that in the future, if people liked high-speed rail, another bond measure would be passed, like Proposition 1A. And that 1A, most people don't realize this, had money for what they call connectivity
Right,
funds.
exactly.
And you would probably apply, what happened is they gave all that money to all the regional agencies. Nothing came here, of course, but you would probably apply for that in the next round. But certainly, there's no question about it. If high-speed rail continues, they're going to want, somebody's going to be pushing for that money to be put into it.
Well, it'll be an important alternative. Right now, a lot of the rail money is coming from the cap and trade program. So our board really divided on whether cap and trade made sense or not, but if they're going to have money on it, we want to get some of it. So we're paying the gas tax. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry, over here.
Is the west side bypass on the short list?
It is not, and part of the reasoning is, well, I mean, I can give you the financial explanation, it's too expensive. The other part of it is, it's controversial because of the amount of ag land impacts that it has, and it's somewhat development related, so it's not on the short list. Yeah, and then, I'm sorry.
Well, two things. Caltrain, the numbers I understand being generated to show how many people live in Salinas and work in San Jose, Morgan Hill, and in South Bay. So some of that generated ridership is based on the number of people that are already commuting.
Right, absolutely.
I think, I'm not sure, but I think it was missed because I've talked to Kimberly about this a couple times. The number of people that would take it to get to the San Jose or the San Francisco airports. Because a lot of people now use the integrated bus system to get to the rail system to get where they want to go. And more mature people feel safer on the train than they do in a bus or in an airplane. So I think if you're looking out over the future with more of us getting older and older, they would feel much more comfortable of getting to the Salinas train station, getting on a train, and being able to get to the airport or the other rail connections that they want to meet. The other issue is that, they're talking about miles driven as being what we would be charged for rather than gas tax, or in addition to. I don't know if it's in addition to.
It's instead of.
What does TAMC feel about that?
So we have urged the federal government and the state to continue looking into this, see how it works, work through the privacy issues. It would provide more of a user fee type of approach. So I personally think that it makes sense. It's kind of all about where you put the price on it and how that corresponds to what you would spend anyway. So I think they'll probably be able to work through this. I think that it's a pretty big step, and you have to make it so that it's as easy as it is just going out and filling up your tank. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem. You have to make it so that you're not paying a giant bill at the end of the year either. So they have this pilot program, and I signed up for it because what the heck, it'd be interesting to see how it works. So yeah. I was going to say, if you guys are interested in hearing a little more about the rail program, I would encourage you to invite Christina Watson from our office to come and present to you all. So I'd be happy to make that commitment.
I personally think the city of Salinas needs to know more about that project. And I really feel that our representative who's been involved in that is just not generating enough community interest, because as I talk to more and more seniors, they want a way to be able to move up the corridor, get over to Sacramento maybe, and maybe even go further. They don't want to drive, they don't want to be on a bus, and they don't want to get on the plane. So to me, rail is the answer of being able to make that happen, but there's no sort of generated conversation going on in the city of Salinas about it. And I know it's been difficult because you've been trying to package this together with all the players that are in there, but it sounds to me like you've gotten to the point of where you now really need to have the community supporting it.
Well, we'd be happy to pull together and do a bigger group presentation on it, and I appreciate your support on it. And I just have to tell you, it's interesting because you're talking from the perspective of seniors. The surveys and the information out there shows that younger folks don't want to do it either. They don't want to sit in traffic. They are less likely to buy cars. You think about college students, right? They're persisting now beyond the college years, and they want to have this option. I personally take the train to Sacramento every time I can. I catch it the same day. Because I can get work done. I can sleep, I can get work done. I can eat a meal without being dangerous. I can take phone calls and such. And so I love taking the train because it's useful time. And it's easier to do all that than it is in a bus. All right. That's, oh, okay.
I'm not going to ask a question from the perspective of the Salinas Taxpayers Association. I think when our board next meets, one thing we should discuss is you had up there the plan for an oversight committee for how the money is spent. I think that's a great idea. The problem with it is unless you explicitly plan that, what could happen is what happened to Measure G in Salinas. To tell you the truth, for some reason, some people don't want a Taxpayers Association representative overseeing how they spend money. And I think, I don't know why, but maybe it has something to do with oversight. But I think it would be good if, for example, in the education code for school and college bonds, they list all the groups who have a representative, and the Taxpayers Association is listed in there. I think it would be important for some sort of, whether it's a resolution or some other thing that you pass, so that the Taxpayers Association knows that somebody from, and it would probably be somebody from the Salinas Taxpayers Association would be on it. So we don't have to worry that afterwards, like at Salinas, no taxpayer representative, you're just not really needed here at this time. That would be
You have got it. So where this would be is it's called an expenditure plan. That's what it's called in the law. And so what we showed you today and what your handout has is kind of the meat of the expenditure plan in terms of the projects. But the taxpayer safeguard section, we're reviewing the draft, and what we've listed in there is Taxpayers Association is one, business, and I'm happy to put from the peninsula and the Salinas area, because you guys are the two biggest population areas in New York.
There are 3 Taxpayers Associations.
What's the third one?
The third one is Seaside. They have a small one there,
Okay.
that's libertarian oriented. The problem with Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association is they never really meet at all, When something comes up that gets people.
I was going to say, yeah.
They're not very active. This is the one that's most active.
I'm happy to have you both on it, and the same thing with the chambers. We put Chambers of Commerce, one representing the Salinas Valley, we'll just keep it vague, one representing the Monterey Peninsula. So that is how I thought it made sense. In the past, sometimes they'll say, well, each of your board members should name someone. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's someone that's representing anybody else. It has a network that goes out. And so having had a citizens advisory.
Some people fear oversight committees, and I know from dealing with school and college districts that some of them consider them needlers or rather not do anything. If you work well with your bond oversight committee, you could get a lot of somewhat fiscally conservative people to be big supporters of you when you get attacked. I think it's actually a good thing.
Yeah,
So I think we're going to write a letter about that, or at least I'll propose it.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And I really haven't heard anything here today that makes you say, oh, this is going to be bad. So it might be, might be a good outline to have.
Sounds good to me. Okay.
I'm just curious, you mentioned you take the train to Sacramento from San Jose. So how long does it take you when you leave your house, drive to San Jose, get on a train, and then arrive at your destination? I mean, I don't mean to train people, but you're actually Sacramento destination.
Okay, so I actually live in Santa Cruz. It takes me about 45 minutes to get to the train station. So what time do I generally leave? I leave at like 5:45, and I get to Sacramento at 9:45. My meeting's at 10. So it takes a huge amount of time. But that's at 45 minutes I have to do anyway. It's the same as my work commute. The rest of the time I'm sitting on the train. As I get there, park, and get my parking permit in time. I'm sitting on the train, I can sleep, I can eat my breakfast. I'm
Capital Corridor.
yeah, Capital Corridor. I'm reading the paper on the way home. I have a beer.
So you get there for what time in Sacramento?
I get to Sacramento at 9:45, 9:30. Yeah.
Wow.
So for a 10 o'clock meeting, I can get there. It's about, what is that doing?
So that's about
It's
the same
about 4
time,
hours.
about the same time driving.
Driving is about 3 hours from my house. So about 4 hours from my house for 3 hours.
So there's no stops along the way, it's great.
No, there's plenty of stuff.
Oh, I still get that back, huh?
Yeah. So from here, let's see, it's an hour and a half to San Jose. We actually think that they can beat that. They actually think they can beat that. But let's say an hour and a half to San Jose and another 3 hours to Sacramento. So Luis Alejo is very interesting. All right. Anybody else that just hasn't spoken in? Yeah? No? The people that I was ignoring over here, they've left. Okay, go ahead. And I forgot your name.
Gloria Moore.
Gloria, thanks.
I just have to register my complaint.
Go for it.
I know that a great deal of the transportation packages are now hooked up to bike lanes. And I just think you can build all the bike lanes you want, and they're just going to be empty so often that it's just a waste of money per se. I rode a bike for 10 years in Monterey County, rode it all as a recreational bike rider, not as commuting. I keep trying to think, how in my profession could I do what I do and ride a bike? So I think we should encourage people for health reasons, get out there, get on your bike. And what happens is every time I'm in especially a city kind of meeting and people are saying, well, if it was just safer, I would ride my bike. And I go after and talk to those people and I say, do you really ride a bike? And they kind of look at me kind of sheepishly, well, yeah, I get it out, twice a year and ride whatever. So I don't know how much it costs to put the bike lanes in. I think bike lanes can be incorporated without them being highly expensive because they just is the edge of the road and, like we used to do, is that you just mark a line and the bicyclists need to stay over where they're supposed to stay. But I just get this feeling that we're trying to push society into something that is just not going to happen, especially in this area. We house a lot of farm workers, and we see a lot of them do ride their bicycles. But when one day they're working a mile outside of Salinas, and the next day they're working over in Hollister, or the following day they're working down in King City, they're not practically going to use a bike for work. I support the recreational trails because I think it's good to get people out onto that and be able to see your county at a different level rather than through your windshield. But I know that a lot of the money that is coming in if you go through this bike lane fault wrong, as I call it. But I just, I go up to people after they've been at these meetings and they, oh yeah, if it was just safer, I would ride my bike. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I know where you live, I know where you work, so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you're saying. Did you want to respond to her, Tad, or?
Well, I kind of, talking about the recreational trails, I mean, I'm looking at them as hiking trails, but maybe they're not. But if they're hiking trails, I'm an avid hiker. I hike all the time. But this money is for roads and road improvements, and I think that people who are doing hiking maybe should pay for new trails and get the money out there and make our roads better. I mean, it feels good and sounds nice, but the money should be directed to what it's really for. In that angle.
Okay.
I can respond to probably the same things you can. I hate the bike trails myself. A couple things come into play. First of all, a lot of what regional agencies have to do is mandated by the state. And you may have never heard of this bill, Senate Bill 375, but it's forcing a lot of what regional agencies have to do is revolving around what the legislature and the governor have signed into law to fight greenhouse gas emissions and to turn transportation plans into regional things. And you know what? You're going to be forced to do bikes whether you like it or not. Secondly, there's a political reality. Realize that this has to be passed by 2/3. How many of you actually go to TAMC meetings? No, you don't. Well, you know who shows up there in great numbers? The bike people. And they have a lot of power. They could probably bring this thing down if they didn't have their millions of dollars for bike paths. I think a lot of what they say is greatly exaggerated, but they're very passionate about the bike issue. And unless you show up at these meetings and offset them, they are going to have a lot of power. My personal feeling is this thing's probably going to have a lot of millions of dollars for bikes if it's ever going to go anywhere. So,
But I don't want to start I know many of those people. They do not ride a bike to work. I pretty much know almost everybody in the city of Salinas who rides.
yeah, they're utopians. They have a dream.
to
Oh,
work.
come on, you look like a bicyclist. Ted, you look like
cost a mile to do the bike lane on Engine Road?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I can tell you that there's some truth in what you're saying, and then there's, I mean, it depends. So, for instance, think back to when you were in college or when you were in high school, and most of us didn't have cars, right? And so, how did you get around? You would take the bus, which frankly my sister would never do, or you'd ride your bike. So, CSUMB, those kids desperately wanted bike lanes, and that's where the Engine Road bike lanes came from. And they finally have striped them all the way up so you can get from CSUMB and you know, out and around to town.
I'm on that road probably 16, 17 times a week. And I hardly ever see a bike rider. And I'm on that road at all.
It doesn't matter.
No, it does matter, because
As taxpayers, yes, it does matter.
yes, and if we don't have some pushback to it, to get the results of what we really need. I will support every recreational trail that comes up. I sat on the county planning commission and we worked our fannies to get recreational trails.
I love trails, but I think this is the wrong place to pay for it.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, it's not transportation. You know, we don't live in the age of where people ride their bicycles. You know, when I'm watching something on TV and they're in Tokyo or someplace and there's 60,000 people riding their bicycles to work, but I don't see it here. I mean, I pretty much know who rides a bicycle to work in the city of Salinas. And, you know, to me, it's just fluff and puff.
Well, you're certainly not the only person who said that, and Kevin's right that we kind of balance a whole range of needs. But I'll also tell you that I can't ride my bike to work because it's way too far, and a lot of people are in that situation. But I can ride my bike to appointments around town, and it is a maze to try to get around downtown Salinas. And if you saw some lady riding this bike with half-flat tires going in the middle of the lane at Engine or in Alisal, that was me today. Because there are no bike lanes on Alisal. There are bike lanes on Pajaro, which is fantastic, and it's fine on Riker. But there's a lot of gaps you could fill up. That would encourage people to get around town and not have to ride on the sidewalk, which I personally hate.
You just have to pick the right streets, Debbie. I mean,
well, if I'm going to the county building, you tell me how I cross over. But that said, it's not that much money. And the downtown vibrancy plan includes a good network of things. Would I have chosen Engine as the top bike project, you know, to do? No, but that was something the city marina prioritized. So, you know, that was
I
really
think the college is changing.
Well, I'm just going to tell you that there are a lot of people my age. I mean, even though I sometimes think I'm the only person that's my age, they're not going to vote for this with bike lanes. And especially when those bike lanes are segregated from the streets. You know, you're right, the Pajaro Street and those bike lanes are wonderful. That's what I'm saying. You just take a normal street and you just stripe it off. You know, now you have to stay, 36 inches from a bike rider? So the bike
no
rider...
in your car at bike riders.
The bike riders have more, you know,
Yeah.
if people are following the rules, which we know they don't, you know, you post 25 miles an hour and they drive 50 because there's nobody else on the street. So, you know, I just know that I hear a lot of pushback about why are we spending any kind of money to segregate like they're trying to do on Alice F Street, you know.
Well, question for...
And people are gonna not vote for certain things if these bike lanes become such a high priority where people just can't see the ridership when they would like better bus service or they would like other things that they feel the public would get more value from it. And you know, MST has had to cut back a lot of its routes because it's not getting the money that it needs.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and we'll definitely take them into account. You you're not the only one who said that, so.
For the Salinas Taxpayers Association, what percentage of that 600 million do you think would be reasonable for bike lanes?
Well, I think it should be, you have edges on the edge of the road, that's
Yeah,
what.
those are bike lanes.
Yeah, those
If you're
should.
talking about bike paths,
No, I'm talking about IMGN, all that money that was spent, out there was crazy, when all you had to do is just draw white lines down both sides of the road and just say, this is the bike lane, and then, all this.
Well, we're gonna have to, as a board, and anybody who shows up, and of course you're welcome to come to meetings, we're gonna have to be looking at this, and the question is gonna come up, bike lanes, this may not be a good use of money. At what point does it make, what point do we have to
I
oppose
think
it?
you
or
have
not?
to look at LaSalle Street and what is in the vibrancy plan for LaSalle Street. And take a look at that, and then you ask people like Gary Peterson, or you ask Debbie, who's an expert, how much is this really gonna cost? LaSalle Street would be better served, and everybody would be better served if they took all the parking off of LaSalle Street. Then you definitely could have good bike lanes in that extension in the right-of-way of the road, and you don't have to gussy it up and make it whatever, it would be there.
But I think more people would be negatively affected by the lack of parking
Yes,
than would be positively
business.
affected
Well,
by the bypass. How many people do you see riding down
it's
Alsou?
definitely
there goes your
gonna.
two-thirds.
Well, nobody
Yeah,
rides down
exactly.
Ellisville except for me, because you have to ride in the middle of the road
Exactly.
to get on,
If it's
to
a
it.
bike lane, how many people would use it?
Yeah, that's,
I think also a lot of people would use it, I have to say. The key issue, having kind of gone around the block in LSL now in my car and on my bike, is the stoplights. All those stoplights, I tell you, they're not synchronized at all. There's no left turns. One person tries to make a left turn. I mean, there's a lot of improvements that can be made
yeah.
on LSL to make it, and the county workers, that's a real nightmare trying
But
to
we
cross
have to
there, too.
remember that LaSalle is a major thoroughfare. It's no longer a little folksy street, and it is hard to make people take the parking off. But other communities have done it, and people have learned to live with it, truthfully have learned to live with it. But, I don't mind if you stripe every street, if you have enough width, I don't mind, and then they're talking about to calm the traffic down on
Yeah,
South Street,
I just
we're
would,
gonna make the lanes narrower. Oh my gosh, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have people in my lane. I mean, they can hardly drive in the width that they're already given. I don't have anything against bicycle lanes as long as there's not a huge cost incurred of being able to provide them.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think the time to do it is when you first start the road, and you just push this. And I appreciate what you're saying, I appreciate what you're saying, Kevin, because I think it's about 5% of the program. Maybe when you count the school improvements, so that kids can walk to school, it's a little more than
How
that.
much of that's gonna be in the River Road project, the 5%?
A certain percentage of, no, I was looking at the trails, recreational trails.
Oh,
The
because
Forte.
you got the bikes in the River Road.
Yeah,
where it says
yeah,
it's-
that's another one. And I can tell you, so we're taking input from folks, and so I appreciate the input about the bike lanes, I appreciate the fact that we should talk about trains. I appreciate the request for you guys to be listed as one of the people in the Citizens Advisory Committee, because I think that's a better way to do it than to just kind of have people kicked out.
We'll send a letter.
Yeah, that would be really good doing it. Is there anything else that you want me to have as a takeaway from the presentation here? We all agree we need to do something about the roads. Every time I drive, I have a Mini Cooper, and so it's like, just there.
Yeah, it's embarrassing when that, the whole city with that.
One last thing, Debbie. I would give up having any of my potholes filled in Salinas to give that money to get the Castroville situation paid for.
Which one?
The flyover, whatever.
Oh, the interchange.
Yeah, well, no, for the kids to be able to get from Castroville to the high school.
So, we're back on again.
Yeah,
We're gonna have a bunch of money taken out of next year, and don't even get me going, but, improvements, money we got in there for wiping engine, money we got in there for Highway 68 at Corral de Tierra, money in Highway 1 in Carmel, but but supposedly the money's back for the Castroville overcrossing. So you don't have to take a pocket money and put it into that. The project's been a long time.
Call it a
coming.
bike crossing and we'll go again.
I think pedestrian crossing, it's to the school safely, yeah. But
I
thank you,
mean,
appreciate
I
your
just,
support.
I see that kind of a project as being the highest priority. And you're gonna tell me differently, but I can't believe that it's so expensive that we can't get that project done. I
Well,
mean,
it's just that the state funding situation is so bad that they said you can have this money, and they say, no, you can't. The whole state taking the money away.
you know, one of these days, there's going to be a really serious issue happen down there.
Yeah. Well,
And then-
hopefully we get it built before then.
And then everybody's gonna say, well, why don't we take care of that? It seems like this
Oh, I
is
know,
something easy to take care of. I mean, we can continue to kill people on the roads and get very little reaction to it. But, you know, you take a school child and the multiple things that could happen out there.
Mhm.
And a lot of those kids walk that path at dark because they are after school with sports, etc.
Yeah, every time we're out there taking pictures, we run into people.
They don't have a parent to come and pick them up, you know, they have, so I just think that it's just absolutely positively foolish that that's not the #1 project right now in Monterey County.
Well, it's, yeah, that's the problem with relying on state funding, that's why we're looking for local money. So, yeah. So, anything else for the good of the order? Kathy, did you have?
No, I was gonna say, one good thing about this is you're able to go to meetings and push for this sort of thing, which I think we should be doing. And Los Angeles legislators are gonna be determining where this money goes. That's one advantage of having a county sales tax. I mean, I've heard, you know, I have never been to a TAMC meeting myself. I would assume that there's just a small number of activists there. And if you go and push something, you could probably have a lot of disproportionate influence. So
That's
you should,
actually very
you know, I don't know, Lori, you push it until they say, let's just do it so we don't have to hear about it anymore.
One last concern, I see that the San Jose Business Group that Carl is the head of,
Silicon Valley Leadership Group.
you know, they're trying to get that connection before Southern California gets all the money for the high-speed rail. Will that have any effect on, I mean, it seems like a tremendous amount of money goes to Southern California. But with having the Silicon Valley group now try to get that connection from the valley to San Jose, do you think that's going to make a difference for smaller counties like Monterey? Or
Well, kind of to Kevin's point about if there's high-speed rail coming into Gilroy, people are going to be clamoring for us to get a train to Salinas to get to Gilroy. So anything that moves high-speed rail north is good, unless they're going to take all the money made from high-speed rail and give it to us to put in the Salinas, you know, the regular rail service. So
They didn't have enough money to lay track for that first initial operating.
Between construction segment, Bakersfield and Fresno.
Yeah, well, now it's between Madera and Chapter is what they're currently planning. They've awarded the civil engineering contracts for that, but you know, they're gonna have to get a lot more money to do anything.
Debbie, thank you so much. I'm sorry that you didn't have an outreach number of people.
At least you got the smart ones.
That's
A
right.
lot of people want to
I think so. Well,
Those
and
are the people who can make it loose.
well, it's a very engaged group, so thanks so much, and we appreciate